Teacher sees student eating only crumbs, and what she discovers breaks her heart. Jennifer Thompson never imagined she would find one of her students doing such a thing. After 25 years dedicated to teaching at Washington Elementary School in the Hope Valley neighborhood of Chicago, she thought she had seen it all. But when she returned to the classroom to fetch forgotten notebooks, she caught Ethan gathering cookie crumbs from the empty desks. The 11-year-old boy, always the most diligent in the class, didn't notice her presence. With careful movements, he collected every tiny piece he found, storing them all in a stained napkin. Jennifer watched silently, her heart tightening as she saw the boy's trembling hands. "Ethan, what are you still doing here?" The boy startled, dropping some of the crumbs on the floor. His dark eyes welled up with restrained tears as he tried to hide the napkin behind his back. I was just helping clean up, teacher, Mrs. Martha said I could." Jennifer approached slowly, as if trying not to scare a wounded animal. She had known Ethan since the start of the school year and knew he was incapable of lying without his voice faltering. And it was faltering now. "Sweetheart, you don't have to lie to me. Can you tell me why you were saving those crumbs?" "It wasn't important, teacher. I just wanted to help." But the tears he had been holding back began to roll down his thin face. Jennifer then noticed what she should have seen weeks ago. Ethan's clothes were looser, his cheeks less full, and he had refused school snacks every time she offered, always with the same excuse that he wasn't hungry. "Ethan, when was the last time you ate something?" The silence that followed was deafening. The boy lowered his head, his shoulders shaking as he fought back sobs. "I had breakfast, teacher. Grandma made it." "What did you eat?" "Bread with sugar." His voice was barely a whisper. Jennifer felt her own tears threatening to spill, but she held them back. She needed to understand the situation before acting. "And your dad, Ethan? Where is he?" "He went to work outside Chicago. Said he'd send money, but it hasn't come yet." Jennifer knew stories like this. Men who left in search of work and sometimes took months to settle and send help home. But there was something else in Ethan's voice, a hesitation that put her on alert. "How long ago did he leave?" 3 months. 3 months without word. Jennifer knew that wasn't normal, but she didn't want to press the boy further. Instead, she knelt beside him and gently touched his shoulder. "Sweetheart, do you want to talk to me about how things are at home?" Ethan lifted his eyes, and for the first time, Jennifer saw the vulnerability he had been trying to hide. He was a boy trying to be a man too soon, carrying a weight that shouldn't have been his. "Grandma Ruth isn't doing well, teacher. She takes a lot of medicine, and it's expensive. She doesn't know I know, but I hear her crying at night when she thinks I'm asleep." Jennifer's heart broke a little more. Ruth Johnson, Ethan's grandmother, was a 72-year-old woman who had taken responsibility for her grandson when the boy's mother left years ago. Jennifer had met her at the start-of-year meeting and remembered a dignified woman, clearly struggling with age and financial hardship. "Are you having trouble buying food?" Ethan nodded slowly, as if admitting it was the hardest thing in the world. "Grandma does what she can, but her money barely covers the medicine. She doesn't eat enough so I can eat, but I see it. That's why I take the crumbs, to bring home and share with her." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now continuing, Jennifer felt a mix of admiration and heartbreak upon hearing those words. An 11-year-old boy trying to care for his elderly grandmother, sacrificing his own dignity to make sure she had something to eat too. "Ethan, why didn't you tell me this before? I could have helped. Grandma said not to bother anyone, that people have their own problems and that we'd manage on our own." It was the typical pride of those who had always worked hard for a living and saw asking for help as a personal failure. Jennifer knew that feeling well. She came from humble beginnings herself and understood how hard it was to accept charity, even when necessary. "Listen, sweetheart, you're not bothering anyone by accepting help. We're like family here at school, and families help each other. But the principal said she can't give food to students because there's no money in the budget." Jennifer felt a surge of irritation. Margaret Wilson, the school principal, had indeed cut the supplemental meal program at the start of the semester, citing budget constraints, but Jennifer knew there were other questionable priorities in the school's spending. "Let me talk to her, okay? In the meantime, you're having dinner with me tonight, and I won't take no for an answer." Ethan hesitated, clearly torn between hunger and the pride he'd inherited from his grandmother. "What about Grandma Ruth?" "She'll worry. We'll stop by and explain the situation. I'm sure she'll understand." That evening, Jennifer walked Ethan home, a small two-room house on the outskirts of Hope Valley. The place was modest but clean, with clear signs of care from someone trying to maintain dignity, despite difficult circumstances. Ruth Johnson greeted them at the door, her expression shifting between relief at seeing her grandson and discomfort at the teacher's unexpected visit. She was a petite woman, her graying hair always neatly kept, her eyes still lively despite exhaustion. "Teacher Jennifer, what a surprise. I hope Ethan hasn't caused any trouble at school." "On the contrary, Mrs. Johnson, Ethan is one of my best students. I came here because I found out you're going through some hardships." Ruth's face flushed and she looked down. Jennifer realized she'd touched a nerve. "It's nothing we can't handle, teacher. Just some temporary complications." "Mrs. Johnson, with all due respect, Ethan was gathering crumbs at school to bring home. That's not temporary." Jennifer's words landed like a bomb in the quiet little room. Ruth looked at her grandson with an expression of shock and pain, as if seeing her own failure as a caregiver. "Ethan, you did that?" The boy couldn't meet his grandmother's eyes. His tears returned as he murmured an apology. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I just wanted you to have something to eat too." Ruth pulled him into a tight hug, her own tears now flowing freely. "My boy, you shouldn't have to worry about these things. It's Grandma's job to take care of you, not the other way around." "But I see you don't eat enough, Grandma, and I know it's because of me." Jennifer watched with a heavy heart. Two people who loved each other deeply, both sacrificing for the other, caught in a spiral of selflessness that was hurting them both. "Mrs. Johnson, may I ask something? What exactly happened to Ethan's father?" Ruth hesitated, exchanging a meaningful look with her grandson. There was something they weren't saying. He went to work on a construction site in Milwaukee, said he'd send money as soon as he got his first paycheck. "And have you heard from him?" Another moment of hesitation. This time it was Ethan who answered, his voice barely coming out. "He sends letters explaining why the money hasn't arrived yet." "Can I see one of these letters?" Ethan ran to the back of the house and returned with a crumpled envelope. Jennifer opened it carefully and began to read. The handwriting was clearly that of a child trying to imitate an adult's, and the content was full of elaborate excuses about payment delays and promises that the money would arrive soon. "Ethan, did you write this letter?" The boy broke down in tears, unable to keep up the lie any longer. "I didn't want Grandma to be even sadder. She already suffers so much." Ruth looked at her grandson with a mix of shock and despair. "Sweetheart, where is your real father?" "I don't know, Grandma. He left and never got in touch again. But I made up the letters so you wouldn't worry." The revelation hit Ruth like a punch to the gut. She sank heavily into the only armchair in the room, her hands trembling as she processed the information. 3 months. 3 months believing he was going to help us. Jennifer felt she needed to step in before the situation deteriorated further. "Mrs. Johnson, I know this is very hard, but we need to focus on what we can do now. You can't go on like this." "Teacher, I don't accept charity. I've worked my whole life and never needed anyone's help. This isn't charity, it's solidarity. And besides, you've already done your part. You worked, raised your family, and now you're raising your grandson. There's no shame in accepting a helping hand." Ruth stayed silent for a long moment, torn between pride and the reality of her situation. "What do you suggest?" "First, let's make sure you have food on the table. Second, we'll see if we can get you some government assistance. And third, we'll try to find out what really happened to Ethan's father." That night, Jennifer took Ruth and Ethan to dinner at her own home. It was the first full meal they'd had in weeks, and Jennifer was moved to see how they savored every bite as if it were the most precious thing in the world. During the conversation, Ruth shared more about her situation. The pension she received was only enough for her heart medication and basic household expenses. She'd tried taking on extra work, but her health limited her options. "The worst part is I've always been independent, teacher. I worked as a seamstress for 40 years, raised 3 children alone after my husband left us. I never thought I'd end up like this. Mrs. Johnson, life sometimes puts us in situations beyond our control. That doesn't diminish your worth in any way. But what if someone finds out about our situation? What if they try to take Ethan away from me?" It was a real and justified fear. Jennifer knew that cases of neglect, even unintentional, could result in families being separated. "That won't happen. We'll solve this together and discreetly." The following Monday, Jennifer went to Principal Margaret to discuss Ethan's situation. The conversation didn't go as she'd hoped. "Jennifer, you know I can't make exceptions. If we start giving free meals to one student, others will expect the same treatment. Margaret, we're talking about a child who's going hungry. This isn't about favoritism. It's about setting a precedent. And besides, cases like this should be reported to Child Protective Services. It's school policy." Jennifer felt a chill in her stomach. She knew involving CPS could complicate Ruth and Ethan's situation even more. "You can't be serious. His grandmother is a responsible person going through temporary financial hardship." "Temporary? 3 months with no word from his father? This doesn't seem temporary to me. And what's your solution? To separate a family that loves each other? The solution is to follow protocol. I'll file a report with Child Protective Services this week." Jennifer left the principal's office with a sense of outrage. She had known Margaret for years and knew she cared more about her own career than the well-being of the students. She decided to take matters into her own hands. She began bringing extra snacks for Ethan, always discreetly. She also spoke with some parents about the possibility of helping the family anonymously. The response was better than she expected. Several parents offered to contribute food, clothes, and even money. Within days, Jennifer had organized a small support network. The first sign of trouble came when Margaret called her into her office again. "Jennifer, I've been made aware of some unauthorized activities involving the family of student Ethan Miller. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play innocent. I know you're organizing a charity campaign without the school's approval. That's against the rules. I'm helping a family in need. I don't see anything wrong with that. What's wrong is using the school's resources without permission and involving other parents in something that should be handled through official channels. The official channels you're so fond of will only hurt this family." "That's not your concern, Jennifer. Your job here is to teach, not social work." The argument quickly grew heated. Margaret made it clear that any continuation of Jennifer's activities would result in disciplinary action. That afternoon, Jennifer went home frustrated and worried. She knew she had to find a way to help Ruth and Ethan without risking her job, but her options were shrinking. The situation worsened the following week. Ethan came to school visibly exhausted and told Jennifer that Ruth had fallen ill during the night. She started having chest pains and couldn't breathe. I almost called an ambulance, but she wouldn't let me. "Ethan, your grandmother needs medical attention. Heart problems are no joke." "I know, teacher, but she said we can't afford a private hospital, and the clinic will take forever to see her." Jennifer knew Ruth was right. The local Medicaid system was overwhelmed, and non-emergency cases could take months to be seen. "How is she today?" "Better, but still weak. She could barely get out of bed." "Does that mean you were left alone to take care of her?" Ethan nodded, and Jennifer saw the weight of responsibility on the boy's shoulders. He was being forced to grow up too fast, taking on a caregiver role in a situation that would challenge even an adult. During class, Jennifer noticed Ethan struggling to focus. He dozed at his desk and made simple mistakes in exercises he usually handled easily. At recess, she pulled him aside. "Sweetheart, did you sleep well last night?" "Not really. I was up most of the night looking after Grandma. She was scared it might happen again." "Did you eat anything today?" Ethan hesitated before answering. "Grandma made some weak tea and split a cookie with me. A single cookie divided between 2 people." Jennifer felt like she was losing the battle against time. Ruth and Ethan's situation was deteriorating fast, and she couldn't help effectively because of the school's restrictions. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. That afternoon, Jennifer made a risky decision. She used her lunch break to visit Ruth and check on her health in person. She found the woman in bed clearly unwell. Her breathing was labored and she looked paler than usual. "Mrs. Johnson, you need urgent medical attention." "Teacher, I'll be fine. It's just a passing discomfort." "This isn't just passing discomfort. You're showing signs of heart complications." Ruth tried to get up to prove she was okay, but nearly fainted from the effort. Jennifer helped her lie back down and grabbed the phone. "What are you doing?" "Calling an ambulance. I won't let you risk your life out of pride." "But the money..." "Mrs. Johnson, Medicaid covers emergency care, and your life is worth more than any financial worry." The ambulance arrived in 20 minutes. Jennifer stayed with Ruth at the hospital through the entire admission process. The doctors confirmed she was experiencing complications related to her heart condition, likely worsened by stress and poor nutrition. "She'll need to stay hospitalized for a few days to stabilize," the cardiologist explained, "and we'll need to adjust her medications." "Doctor, she doesn't have insurance." "What about the costs?" "Medicaid covers the treatment, but she'll need regular follow-ups and some specific medications that might be expensive." While Ruth was being treated, Jennifer called the school and explained she'd be absent due to a family emergency. It wasn't exactly a lie. Ruth and Ethan already felt like family to her. The problem was Ethan. With Ruth hospitalized, he'd be completely alone. Jennifer knew she couldn't leave him on his own, but she wasn't sure what the best solution was. When she took Ethan home that night, she suggested he stay with her until Ruth was discharged. "I don't want to be a bother, teacher." "You won't be a bother at all, and besides, it's not safe for you to stay home alone." "But what if someone at school finds out? The principal won't like it." Jennifer realized Ethan was already internalizing the same fear of repercussions she felt. "Let me handle that. You just focus on being a kid and studying." That night, as Ethan slept in the guest room, Jennifer reflected on how complicated things had gotten. She was risking her career to help a family, but she knew she couldn't live with herself if she did nothing. The next day, as expected, Margaret called her in again. "Jennifer, I heard you left yesterday without prior authorization." "It was a medical emergency. Ethan's grandmother had to be hospitalized." "And where is the boy now?" Jennifer hesitated. She knew her answer could have serious consequences. "He's being properly cared for." "That doesn't answer my question. Where exactly is he?" "Temporarily at my house, until his grandmother is discharged." Margaret's face hardened with disapproval. "Jennifer, you've completely lost your judgment. You can't take students into your home. It's against all regulations and could create legal problems for you and the school. The alternative was leaving an 11-year-old alone. What would you have suggested?" "The suggestion would have been to follow protocol and contact Child Protective Services from the start, like I said. And you think splitting up a loving family is the right solution?" "I think following the rules is always the right solution. And you'll return that boy today, or I'll have to take stricter measures." Jennifer left the principal's office knowing she was at a crossroads. She couldn't abandon Ruth and Ethan, but she also couldn't afford to lose the job that supported her own life. That afternoon, while visiting Ruth at the hospital, she explained the situation. "Teacher, I can't let you lose your job because of us." "Mrs. Johnson, some things are more important than jobs." "No, they're not. You have your own life, your own responsibilities. You've already done too much for us." "And what would your solution be? Leave Ethan alone while you recover?" Ruth fell silent, clearly struggling with a problem that had no easy answer. Maybe it really would be better to call Child Protective Services. At least he'd be in a safe place." "Mrs. Johnson, you're talking about giving up custody of your grandson. I'm talking about doing what's best for him. I clearly can't take proper care of Ethan." "Yes, you can. You're just going through a tough time. A tough time that's lasted 3 months with no end in sight." Jennifer noticed Ruth was starting to convince herself she wasn't a good caregiver. The feeling of inadequacy was eating away at her self-esteem and her determination to keep the family together. "Mrs. Johnson, can I ask you something? Is Ethan happy with you?" "I think so, before all this mess." "Does he feel loved?" "I hope so." "Then you're a good caregiver. The rest is just temporary circumstances that can be fixed." That night, Jennifer had a serious talk with Ethan about their options. "Sweetheart, you might have to stay in foster care temporarily until your grandma fully recovers." Ethan's eyes filled with tears immediately. "I don't want to be away from Grandma Ruth. She's the only family I have left. It would only be temporary. And what if it's not? What if they decide she can't take care of me?" It was a fair fear. Jennifer knew cases like this sometimes led to permanent separations, especially when health and financial issues were involved. "Ethan, I won't let that happen. But we need to find a solution that doesn't put you at risk." "Teacher, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you helping us so much? We're not your family." The question hit Jennifer unexpectedly. For a moment, she was speechless, trying to put into words feelings she didn't fully understand herself. "You know, Ethan, sometimes family isn't just about sharing the same blood. Sometimes it's about who we choose to love and protect. You chose us. I chose you the moment I saw you needed help and that you mattered as people. Even knowing it could cause problems for you, especially knowing that." The next morning, Jennifer woke up to a call from the hospital. Ruth had taken a turn for the worse overnight and had to be moved to the ICU. "Her condition has worsened," the nurse explained. "Her heart is under a lot of stress, and she's not responding well to the initial treatment." Jennifer felt her world crumbling. She took Ethan to school, but knew she wouldn't be able to focus on her usual tasks. During recess, she found Ethan to break the news gently. "Sweetheart, your grandma had a complication last night. She's in the ICU now." "Does that mean she could—" "It means the doctors are taking very good care of her. But it'll take longer for her to recover." Ethan stayed silent for a long moment, absorbing the information. "Teacher, if Grandma Ruth doesn't get better, what's going to happen to me?" "She will get better, sweetheart. Your grandma is a strong woman." "But what if she doesn't?" Jennifer didn't have an answer that could reassure Ethan without lying. The truth was, the situation was getting more complicated by the day. That afternoon after school, they went to the hospital together. Ruth was conscious but clearly weakened by the medication and the machines around her. "Grandma!" Ethan rushed to her bedside, careful not to touch the wires and equipment. "My boy, how are you?" "I'm okay, Grandma. Teacher Jennifer is taking care of me." Ruth looked at Jennifer with gratitude mixed with worry. "Teacher, I can't let you—" "Mrs. Johnson, now is not the time to worry about that. Focus on getting better." "But Ethan can't stay at your house indefinitely. That will cause problems for you." "It already has," Jennifer admitted. "But they're problems I can handle." "What if the school decides to fire you? Then I'll find another job." "Teacher, you can't throw your career away because of us." Ruth was growing agitated and the monitors began beeping. A nurse appeared quickly. "We need to keep the patient calm. Heated discussions aren't good for her heart condition." Jennifer understood the message. She needed to reassure Ruth or her condition could worsen further. "Mrs. Johnson, let's leave these worries for later. Right now, what matters is your recovery." "But, no buts, Ethan is safe, well-fed and attending school normally. That's what matters now." In the following days, a routine settled into an artificial kind of normalcy. Jennifer took Ethan to school in the morning, worked while trying to avoid confrontations with Margaret, and spent afternoons at the hospital visiting Ruth. The situation at school was becoming unbearable. Other teachers began commenting on the case, some supporting Jennifer, others questioning whether she was overstepping professional boundaries. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Then came the event that would change everything. During an afternoon class on Thursday, Jennifer was urgently called to the principal's office. When she arrived, she found two strangers, a social worker and a representative from Child Protective Services. "Teacher Jennifer Thompson?" asked the social worker. "I'm Sarah Jenkins from Child Protective Services. We need to talk about the minor Ethan Miller." Jennifer felt her stomach tighten. She knew this moment would come, but had hoped for more time to prepare. "Of course. How can I help you?" "We received a report that the minor is at risk and that you removed him from his residence without legal authorization." Jennifer glanced at Margaret, who avoided her gaze. It was clear who had made the report. "His grandmother is hospitalized, and he needed a safe place to stay. I thought it was the most responsible decision." "Mrs. Thompson, we understand your concern, but there are protocols for these situations. The minor should have been placed with a registered foster family or a care facility. And you think that would be better for him than staying with someone he knows and trusts? It's not about what we think is better, but what is legal and safe for the child." The conversation lasted over an hour. Jennifer explained the entire situation, from the moment she found Ethan collecting crumbs to Ruth's hospitalization. The social workers listened carefully, taking constant notes. "Where is the minor now?" asked Sarah. "In class, I thought it best to keep his routine normal for as long as possible. We'll need to speak with him and assess the full family situation. Can you call him?" Jennifer knew she had no choice. She left the office with a heavy heart, knowing she was about to deliver difficult news to Ethan. When she appeared at the classroom door, Ethan immediately sensed something was wrong. Their eyes met, and he understood, without words. "Mr. Michael, I need to take Ethan for a few minutes, administrative matters." Ethan followed her down the hallway in silence. When they were away from the other students, he finally asked, "It's about Child Protective Services, isn't it?" "How do you know about that?" "I overheard some colleagues saying they saw strange people in the principal's office, and I knew this would happen sooner or later." "Ethan, no matter what happens, I won't abandon you and your grandmother." "Teacher, what if they take me away? What if I can't see Grandma Ruth anymore?" "That won't happen. I'll fight to keep you together." "Do you promise?" Jennifer hesitated. She knew she shouldn't make promises she might not be able to keep, but seeing the desperation in the boy's eyes, she couldn't say anything else. "I promise." The meeting in the principal's office was harder than Jennifer had imagined. Ethan answered the social worker's questions with a maturity beyond his years, but his growing distress was clear as the interview went on. "Ethan, would you like to stay with your grandmother when she leaves the hospital?" asked Sarah. "More than anything in the world." "And do you think she can take proper care of you?" Ethan hesitated, torn between loyalty to his grandmother and honesty about her struggles. "She tries really hard. It's just, sometimes it's hard for her." "Hard how?" "Because of the expensive medicine and food. But she always puts my needs before hers." "And your father? Do you have any contact with him?" That's when Ethan broke down. All the pressure of the past weeks, all his effort to keep up appearances and protect Ruth, everything came pouring out in a flood of tears. "My dad left and never got in touch again. I made up the letters so Grandma wouldn't be sad, but I don't think he's ever coming back." The social workers exchanged meaningful glances. The situation was more complicated than they'd thought. "Ethan, do you understand that you might need to stay somewhere else temporarily while your grandmother recovers?" "I want to stay with Teacher Jennifer. She takes good care of me and doesn't treat me like I'm a problem." "But Teacher Jennifer isn't legally authorized to care for you." "Does that matter? She gives me love, food, helps me with homework. Isn't that what family does?" Ethan's innocent question hung in the silence of the room. Jennifer felt tears welling up as she saw how an 11-year-old could express ideas that adults unnecessarily complicated. After Ethan returned to class, the social workers spoke privately with Jennifer and Margaret. "The situation is delicate," Sarah explained. "Technically, the child is in a vulnerable position. His grandmother is hospitalized, his father has been absent for months, and there are no other close relatives." "What's the usual procedure?" Jennifer asked. "Temporary institutional care until the family situation stabilizes." "And if it doesn't?" "Then we'd start the process of finding a foster family for adoption." The words hit Jennifer like a punch. The possibility of Ethan being permanently separated from Ruth was real, and closer than she'd imagined. Is there any way to avoid institutional care? Yes, if there's a close relative or qualified person who can take temporary custody. Could I be that person? Sarah hesitated before answering. Theoretically, yes, but it would require a qualification process that could take weeks, and even then, it would only be temporary. Weeks he wouldn't have to spend away from the people he knows. Mrs. Thompson, may I ask what exactly your interest is in this case? It's not common for teachers to get so involved in a student's family situation. It was a fair question, but a hard one to answer. Jennifer gathered her thoughts before speaking. When I started teaching 25 years ago, I thought my job was to teach English and math. But I've learned that sometimes the most important thing I can teach is that there are people in this world who care. Ethan and Ruth reminded me of that. And are you willing to go through the entire process for temporary custody? If it means they can stay together, yes. Even knowing it might not work out, that it might just be a temporary solution. Even knowing that. The social workers left Washington Elementary, promising to look at all the options and give an answer in a few days. Meanwhile, Ethan could stay with Jennifer, but the situation needed to be formalized quickly. That night, Jennifer explained to Ethan what had been discussed. Does that mean I can keep living with you? For now, yes. But we might need to make it official through Child Protective Services. And Grandma Ruth? Will she be able to come home when she gets better? We'll fight for that to happen. Teacher, can I ask you something? Always. If in the end, they decide I can't live with Grandma anymore, would you really adopt me? The question caught Jennifer off guard. She thought about temporary custody, but adoption was a much bigger, permanent step. Ethan, that's a very important decision that would affect our whole lives. I know, but if the only choice was me going to a shelter or living with you forever, what would you choose? Jennifer looked at that brave boy who had faced so much in such a short time, who cared for his sick grandmother and made up letters to spare her more pain, who collected crumbs without losing his dignity. I'd choose you, son. Always you. Ethan smiled for the first time in days, a smile that lit up his thin, tired face. Then I won't be afraid of anything else, because I know I'll have a family one way or another. Over the weekend, Jennifer took Ethan for a special visit to Ruth. She'd been moved from the ICU back to a regular room, a sign her condition was stabilizing. Grandma! Ethan ran into Ruth's arms, and she held him tight. My boy, how I've missed you. I've missed you too, but Teacher Jennifer has been taking really good care of me. Ruth looked at Jennifer with tears in her eyes. Teacher, how can I ever thank you for all you've done for us? Mrs. Johnson, no thanks needed. But I do need to tell you about some changes happening. Jennifer explained about Child Protective Services intervention and the possibility of temporary custody. Ruth listened quietly, her face shifting between worry and relief. Does this mean you want to take Ethan away from me for good? Not necessarily, but it means when you leave the hospital, you'll need to prove you can care for him properly. And how will I do that when we can barely afford food? Mrs. Johnson, I have a proposal. What if, when you're discharged, you both came to stay with me temporarily? My house is big, I have an extra room, and that way I can help you recover while we care for Ethan together. Ruth was stunned by the suggestion. Teacher, you can't be serious. That's too much to ask. I'm not asking, I'm offering, and it would be temporary until you get back on your feet. But what if I never do? What if my health never lets me care for him properly? Then we'll face that when it comes, but at least we try to keep the family together. Ethan looked from one to the other, clearly hopeful but trying not to get too excited. Grandma, I think it'd be good. Teacher Jennifer's house is really nice and she makes great food. Ruth laughed for the first time in weeks. Just for the food? Not just, but also for that. Jennifer could see Ruth was seriously considering the offer. Mrs. Johnson, you don't have to decide now. Think it over and give me your answer when you're ready. Teacher, can I ask you something hard? Of course. Why are you willing to do all this for people you barely know? Jennifer thought for a moment before answering. You know, Mrs. Johnson, when I started teaching, I thought I'd be the one teaching the children. But I found out they taught me so much more. Ethan taught me about courage, about unconditional love, about never giving up. You taught me about dignity, about sacrifice, about family. Maybe I'm doing this because you've given me more than I could ever repay." Ruth cried softly, moved by Jennifer's words. "I accept your offer, teacher, but on one condition." "What?" "Let me contribute in some way. I can cook, I can sew, I can help around the house. I don't want to just be a burden to you." "Mrs. Johnson, you could never be a burden. But if it makes you feel better, I'll accept your help." "And what if in the end we find out it doesn't work? Then at least we'll have tried to do the right thing." The following Monday, Jennifer had another conversation with the social workers. This time, the talk was more optimistic. "We spoke with the hospital doctors, and they think Mrs. Johnson will be discharged in a week. Her condition has stabilized." "And what about the custody issue?" "We've decided to temporarily approve the current arrangement. You can keep Ethan under your care while his grandmother fully recovers, but there will be monthly follow-up visits for the next 6 months. And after that, if all goes well, Ethan returns to his grandmother's custody. If there are any problems, we'll need to reassess the situation." It was the best outcome Jennifer could have hoped for at that moment. At least Ruth and Ethan would have a chance to stay together. "There's one more thing," Sarah continued. "We managed to locate Ethan's father." Jennifer's heart raced. That information could change everything. "And what's his situation?" "He's been working on a construction site in Indiana. Apparently he had some documentation issues that prevented him from sending money home, but it's been resolved now." "Does he know about his family's situation?" "He does now. And he said he's arranging to return to Chicago as soon as possible." Jennifer felt torn between relief and worry. It was good to know Ethan's father was okay and wanted to help, but it also meant the whole family dynamic would change again. "And Ethan, has he been told about this?" "We thought it best if you broke the news. He trusts you more." That afternoon, after class, Jennifer sat down with Ethan to talk. "Sweetheart, I have some important news about your father." Ethan's face tightened with a mix of worry and hope. "Is he okay?" "He's fine. And he knows about your situation. He's trying to come back to Chicago as soon as possible." Ethan stayed silent for a long moment, processing the information. "Does that mean he didn't really abandon us?" "It seems not. Apparently, he had some problems that kept him from reaching out." "So, now what? What happens when he comes back?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I know he wants to help you." "Teacher, even if my dad comes back, can I still be your friend?" The question touched Jennifer deeply. "Ethan, we'll always be friends, no matter where you live or who you're with. That will never change. What if he wants us to leave Chicago? Then we'll face that when the time comes. But for now, let's focus on what we can control. Taking care of your grandma and making sure you keep studying." "Teacher, can I tell you a secret?" "Always." "I want my dad to come back, but I'm also scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared he'll leave again. And scared things will go back to how they were before." Jennifer understood perfectly. Ethan had found a new emotional stability in recent weeks, and his father's return brought uncertainty about the future. "Son, it's natural to be afraid of change, but remember what we talked about, taking things one day at a time?" "I remember." "Then let's do that. Today you're safe, well-fed and going to school. Tomorrow we'll make sure it's the same, and the day after too. And I can always count on you?" "Always." A week later, Ruth was discharged from the hospital. Jennifer went to pick her up with Ethan, and their reunion was emotional. Ruth was weaker but visibly relieved to be leaving the hospital. "Grandma, are you really okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, and I can't wait to see Mrs. Jennifer's house." The adjustment period at Jennifer's home was smoother than she had expected. Ruth did her best to help where she could, cooking simple but delicious meals and assisting Ethan with his homework. Ethan seemed more at ease knowing he had both Ruth and Jennifer looking after him. The routine they settled into was comfortable for everyone. Jennifer left for work in the morning, Ruth took care of the house and prepared lunch, and Ethan came home from school to find the two most important women in his life waiting for him. 2 weeks after Ruth's discharge, The news everyone had been waiting for and dreading arrived. Ethan's father was returning to Chicago. "When does he get here?" Ruth asked. "Tomorrow afternoon," Jennifer replied. "He wants to talk to you both about the situation." "And about the future," Ruth added, clearly worried. Ethan was visibly nervous. 3 months without seeing his father, along with all the changes he'd been through, made him anxious about their reunion. "Teacher, will you be there when I talk to him?" "If you want me to be, yes." "I do. Please." Robert Miller arrived late on a Thursday afternoon. He was a man in his 40s, looking tired but determined. When he saw Ethan, his eyes filled with tears. "Son, you've grown so much." Ethan hesitated for a moment before running into his father's arms. The hug was long and emotional, but Jennifer noticed some tension in the boy's posture. "Dad, why did it take you so long to come back?" "Son, I had some issues with my work papers. I couldn't leave Indiana and I couldn't send money. I tried calling so many times, but the phone was always out of service. The line was cut after the 2nd month," Ruth explained. "We couldn't pay the bill." Robert looked around Jennifer's home, clearly impressed by the warm environment. "How long have you been staying here?" 2 weeks, Ruth replied. "Mrs. Jennifer took us in when I left the hospital." Robert turned to Jennifer with deep gratitude. "Teacher, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for my family." "You don't have to thank me. I did what anyone would do." "No, you didn't. You went far beyond what anyone would do, and I'll never forget that." The conversation that followed was long and sometimes tense. Robert explained he had found steady work with a construction company in Chicago and was looking to rent a place nearby. "What about the financial problems?" Ruth asked. "I managed to save some money these past months. It's not much, but it's enough for us to start over." "And my medicine?" "We'll figure it out, Mum. We always do." Jennifer noticed Ruth wasn't entirely convinced. The struggles of the past months had shaken her confidence in the family's ability to manage on their own. "Robert, may I suggest you don't rush to leave? Ruth is still recovering, and moving too quickly might not be good for her. Teacher, I can't take advantage of your kindness any longer." "It's not taking advantage, it's being careful. Let things settle gradually." During dinner, Jennifer observed the dynamic between father and son. Ethan was clearly happy to have his father back, but also seemed hesitant, as if testing whether this time would be different. "Dad, will you be working far from here?" "No, son. The job is right here in Chicago. I'll be able to come home every day." "And you promise you won't leave again?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Robert looked at his son seriously. "Son, I can't promise I'll never need to travel for work, but I promise I'll never leave again without letting you know exactly where I am and for how long. And if something goes wrong again? If something goes wrong, we'll solve it together. I won't try to handle everything alone without telling you." It was an honest answer, and Jennifer saw Ethan relax a little. In the weeks that followed, the family gradually settled into a new rhythm. Robert found a small but decent house to rent just a few blocks from Jennifer's place. Ruth was regaining her confidence, especially knowing she had support nearby if needed. The hardest moment came when it was time for Ethan and Ruth to move into the new house. Jennifer knew it was the right thing to do, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing a family she had learned to love. "Teacher, will you miss us?" Ethan asked the night before the move. "I'll miss you very much, but you'll be close by and I can visit whenever you want. What if I want to sleep over sometimes? There will always be a room waiting for you. And if Grandma gets sick again? Then you know where to find me anytime, day or night." On moving day, Jennifer helped carry the few belongings Ruth and Ethan had accumulated. The new house was simple but clean and cozy. Robert had worked hard to make sure everything was in order. "Teacher, would you like to have lunch with us today, to celebrate the new house?" Ruth asked. "I'd love to." Lunch was cheerful, full of plans for the future. Robert talked about his goals at work, Ruth about the little touches she wanted to add to the house, and Ethan about his school projects. But when it was time for Jennifer to leave, everyone was visibly emotional. "Teacher, thank you for everything. For seeing me when no one else did, for taking care of Grandma, for showing us what real family is," Ethan said, hugging her tightly. Thank you, Ethan, for teaching me what courage is, what love is, and what truly matters in life. Ruth hugged her too, whispering in her ear, "You saved our family, I'll never forget it. You saved yourselves. I just helped you remember how." Robert was the last to say goodbye. "Teacher, if you ever need anything at all, just call. We're family now forever." Yes, we're family, and real families never forget each other. 6 months later, during the follow-up visit from Child Protective Services, the report was overwhelmingly positive. Ethan was excelling in school, Ruth had fully recovered, and was even doing some seamstress work to help with household expenses, and Robert had been promoted at work. "We can consider this case officially closed," Sarah said during the meeting. "The family is stable and self-sufficient. And Ethan has become a role model for other students at school. He's even helping some classmates who are going through tough times." Jennifer smiled at that. Ethan had learned to turn his own painful experience into compassion for others. "And how is your relationship with them?" "We're still very close. They have dinner with me every Sunday, and Ethan still comes over to do homework at my table some afternoons each week. And you don't regret getting so involved?" "Never. It was the best decision I ever made in my life." A year after the day she found Ethan collecting crumbs, Jennifer was organizing her classroom when she heard a knock at the door. It was Ethan, now 12 years old and noticeably taller and stronger. "Teacher, I brought something for you." He handed her a carefully colored drawing. It showed a table full of food with 4 people sitting around it: Ethan, Ruth, Robert, and Jennifer. At the bottom, written in neat letters, it said, "My family, thank you for teaching me that love isn't about blood, it's about choice." Jennifer felt tears in her eyes as she looked at the drawing. "Ethan, this is beautiful. I'm going to put it up on my classroom wall." "Teacher, can I tell you something?" "Always." "Remember when you asked me when was the last time I'd eaten?" "I remember. That day, I thought I'd never have a real family. I thought I'd be alone in the world. And now I know family isn't just who gives you life, it's who teaches you how to live." Jennifer hugged the boy, who had changed her life as much as she had changed his. "You know, Ethan, you taught me something important too." "What?" "That sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply see someone. Really see them. See their pain, their courage, their worth. You saw me when I was invisible. And you let me see you. That was a gift." 2 years later, Jennifer received a special invitation. Ethan had been chosen as the class speaker for his middle school graduation. When she arrived at the ceremony, she saw Ruth, Robert, and some of the other families she had helped over the years. During his speech, Ethan talked about courage, about family, and about how sometimes angels come disguised as English teachers. "I learned that crumbs can be enough when shared with love. I learned that family is who chooses to stay when things get hard. And I learned that heroes exist, and sometimes they wear glasses and carry stacks of notebooks to grade." When the ceremony ended, Jennifer was surrounded by Ruth, Robert, and Ethan. "Teacher, we have a proposal for you," said Robert. "What is it?" "We want you to be Ethan's official godmother, so everyone knows we're family. And do I accept this proposal?" "If you want to officially be part of our mess," Ruth laughed, "I accept, with great pride." That night, during the celebration dinner at Jennifer's house, which had become a tradition for all special occasions, Ethan made a toast. "To teacher Jennifer, who taught me that crumbs can turn into feasts when seasoned with love." "To you," Jennifer replied, "who taught me that sometimes we save others when it's really us who needed saving." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of perseverance and true love. Did Ethan manage to show that courage can appear in the most unexpected places? Did Jennifer make the right decision by risking everything for a family that wasn't even hers? Leave your honest opinions in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. If you believe true love can transform lives like it did in this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.